Hello, friends. Welcome to the Spotlight Sessions from A&P Talent Group. I'm Rosie Ferguson, your host. I'm so glad you're with me because today we're joined by Matthew Morgan, a casting director with over 2 decades in the industry. He's the founder of Morgan Casting with offices in Toronto, New Orleans, and Canton, Mississippi. In this episode, we're going to tap into Matthew's immense experience and get his insights on successful auditioning and casting. With a portfolio spanning feature films, TV series, and commercials across North America, he's collaborated with directors such as James Franco, Paul Schrader, Alison Eastwood. His work includes credits such as Master Gardener, As I Lay Dying, and Blue Bayou. Morgan Casting offers services in English, French, and Spanish and excels in on-location casting, setting up pop-up offices in various markets. As a respected member of both the Canadian and American casting guilds, Matthew brings a perspective from both sides of the border. We are so happy he is here. Welcome to the show, Matthew. I'm so happy you can make time for us with such a busy travel schedule.
First off, thank you for the beautiful intro. It's my pleasure to join you, and I love helping actors and sharing my knowledge. That's the primary reason I'm a casting director. I love it.
Of course.
So,
Matthew,
looking forward to chatting today.
Matthew, can you share a bit about your journey in the entertainment industry and how you got here, how you became a casting director?
Absolutely. I am American by birth. I was born and reared in Mississippi, and I am Canadian by choice. I've been here over 20 years and feel so grateful to call myself a Canadian citizen and worked really hard for it. So that's sort of where my journey started. I graduated in foreign languages, French and Spanish, and international business. And I got a degree in international business because I wanted to work abroad and use my language skills. But at the heart of what I really wanted to do was to be an actor, to see myself on screen. That was my dream. So I graduated from university. I got hired by FedEx to work in their French e-com department in Montreal.
Oh, cool.
I was so excited. I could live in Canada where I could speak French.
Yes.
Days before my flight, they said, "Sir, we're actually going to send you to Mississauga." So I went from Mississippi to Mississauga.
Well, yeah, you can spell them both, right? They start off the same way, so that's great.
Where is this? And I looked at the map and thought, oh, it's close to Toronto. Back when I tapped the T in Toronto. And, I came here and I just loved it. I worked for FedEx, and in my off time and my lunch breaks, I started auditioning. I signed up with a talent agency and modeling agency at the time called Armstrong Men, AP. Toronto's Gail McInnes of Magnet Creative was my agent. And I started going on auditions and just loved it. And eventually I quit my corporate job. I had to explain that to my parents, who had sent me to France and to Quebec and all these places to study. And I just went for it. I took a big leap of faith to follow my dream. And it was tough. I ran around Toronto with my pearlies in the back of my car, going on go-sees and auditions. And eventually I got introduced to an amazing casting director, Shasta Lutz of Jigsaw Casting.
Yep.
And hired me to be her assistant, and over time trained me to be a print casting director at her company. And, my forte at the time was models and even actors doing commercial print advertising. And I really enjoyed it. But what I wanted to do was to cast actors, because at the core of what I love to do was acting. So after some time, I left and I opened my own business. And that was back in 2004, and never looked back. So that's sort of how I got in as being a casting director. I auditioned for another casting director who sort of taught me the ropes, for which I will always be grateful. And I love what I do.
My goodness, Matthew, what an amazing story. And you're so joyful. You could just feel your joy. And when I was reading all about you and looking at your website, and I just want to say, there's millions of websites out there, and you've seen so many different types. And yours, when I hit your landing page, morgancasting.com, I gasped. It was so beautiful with all these beautiful animations. And I really, guys, check out Matthew's website, morgancasting.com. It just felt so different from everybody else's website. It was colorful with these beautiful animations and so joyful. So I just wanted to say, normally you don't get excited over a website, but yours is so special and amazing. And all those animations are just so, they reflect your travels and all sorts of just really, really neat things. So I love your website. I just have to say that. And what inspired you to have something such a lovely design?
I love to have fun. I'm a fun person. And I thought to myself, sometimes I look at other people's websites when I was doing research and they seemed very corporate, very serious.
Yes.
And although I am very good at business, in my opinion, I like to have fun. And I felt like it reflected me. I wanted to sort of focus on the cities in which I live, the areas in which I work, the spots that I've been fortunate enough to travel to and work on location. And I pulled different elements from those cities. If you look at the Toronto sort of icon, it was all the things that I love about Toronto, the streetcar, the CN Tower. You'll see, different elements that reflect Montreal, that reflect New York, Los Angeles, Louisiana. There's a crawfish on there and an alligator.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, so I wanted to have some fun with it.
So terrific. So let's chat now about casting and auditioning. You've casted a lot. You've been doing this for over 2 decades. Walk us through the key steps you take when you're casting for film, for TV and commercials. Take us through it.
Absolutely. I try to practice what I preach. I tell actors when you audition, the first thing you should do is inform yourself. The more you know about the project for which you're auditioning, for which I'm about to work, the better you'll do, having a wealth of information. So let's take a film, for instance. It's my duty to read the script, to break down the characters, and to not only search for what I think would be a great fit for the role, but to really find out what my clients want. It's my job to interpret what the director wants, what the producers want. So you really have to get a wealth of information in order to do a good job. So I inform myself, I put out my breakdown, I release it to all the agents, and then you start sifting through and picking the actors. So selecting is sort of step 2. Okay. Inform yourself, outsource, select, and then you go through the great audition process, be it live, virtual, or self-tape. And then, it's sort of my job to sift through the masses and pick my favorites and hand them to my clients on a nice sort of silver platter, right? So it makes their job easier. And those are the steps that I take, more or less, to cast a project.
Matthew, you've done some really amazing stuff, impressive stuff. You've cast 2 feature films directed by and starring James Franco, 2 by Paul Schrader. You've cast for directors like Alison Eastwood, Tate Taylor, John Krasinski. What kind of differences do you see between directors in their approach to casting?
That's a very good question. In general, I find that directors love actors, and the casting is so important to the success of the film. I do see different approaches. Oftentimes, let's take, for instance, Paul Schrader, the films that I cast for him, The Card Counter with Oscar Isaac and Tiffany Haddish. He was the writer. Master Gardener with Sigourney Weaver. He was the author. He wrote the story. So I find sometimes when you have directors who are the writers, they envision people for the part as they're writing. They have a certain look in mind. Whereas James Franco, who directed As I Lay Dying and The Sound and the Fury, those are adaptations from novels, from books written by William Faulkner, so not his work, right? Mm-hmm. So you get sort of different approaches. I think when you have the directors who are the writers, they are oftentimes very particular because they already envision somebody for the part. But all in all, the directors that I've worked with have all loved live callbacks. They've been very hands-on. They want to see the actors in person. They want to be moved. And I've been really fortunate, to have had the opportunity to be in the room with some really talented and creative people.
Let's talk auditions now, and your process of sifting through everybody and finding the right people to show to the directors. What tips can you share to help up and coming actors stand out during auditions and hopefully leave a lasting impression?
Rule number one, I always say, as simple as it sounds, is to follow the directions you're given.
Okay.
I am amazed at the number of actors who will deliver self-tapes and just not do what I asked of them. For me, I will often say I prefer the slate at the beginning. It just makes logical sense for me to hear you introduce yourself for this character. I absorb that. And then I start taking notes. I start watching your audition, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love to see more than one read. I will often ask actors to read it twice. Once as written, and maybe a second time as written, but show me something different. Make some different actor choices, put your spin on it. You could even make it your own a touch. If the dialogue is not lengthy, I will sometimes say, and give me a third read where you completely improv the scene and make it your own. And I did this recently on a series of auditions here in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And I was amazed at the actors who didn't slate at all. The slate was at the end. Or they just gave me one read. And it was great. But it made me wonder, was one read all they thought they needed?
Whoa, right, of course.
The second read. So I start to lose confidence that, can this person read the call sheet? Can they show up on set? Can they bring their materials and deliver? So it's sort of like a very simple test of, can you follow directions? Because that, in effect, is the job of an actor, to take direction, be it written or verbal or what have you, right? So make sure that you really execute what's asked of you. It leaves a very good impression from a professional standpoint.
Matthew, when it comes to self-tapes and you're watching them, and this comes up a lot since now self-tapes are the norm and everyone's doing them, what kind of technical aspects are you paying close attention to when you look at a tape?
Sure. I mean, I know that if you're self-taping from home, you're not walking into my beautifully lit studio. So at the same time, I need to be able to pass that video along to my clients with confidence.
Sure.
If I can't see you, if I can't hear you, no matter how talented or great you are, I just can't pass it along because it's a reflection of me, even though I'm not filming you. So you want to do the very best you can. Many actors tape from home. They have their own setup, which is really smart, right? If you can get a great camera, a tripod, someone to film you, and a reader that you trust, that's all you need. And, if it's a very big role or something super important, I think it could be advantageous to go into a beautifully lit studio and get recorded, right? But the outputs need to be good. They don't have to be film worthy. A reminder that we're watching this on our iPad or my iPhone or my MacBook. You don't have to shoot it at the largest resolution, and it doesn't have to be professionally lit, but we do need to be able to see you well and hear you. So your outputs are important, right? It's a reflection of your product. I think even more important, or as important as the outputs, are the performance. I find oftentimes if actors are asked to read a set of sides twice, they don't show me their range enough, right? Sometimes they will just make their second read slightly different from the first, which is following the instructions that I gave. But I think it's smart to take a risk and to make it drastically different. If I've never seen you before as an actor, and this is your chance and opportunity to really show me what you can do, maybe you take it from the first read and then go 180 degrees into something completely different for the second read. Because it really shows me your range. It may not be true to the character and what you'd actually do on set, but I think I'm more impressed and you leave a more memorable sort of note when you think outside the box and sort of show me your range.
Sure, and it makes you see, allows for you to see what's special in you, and I'm sure that's what you're looking for, what's different and what's special. You mentioned, it's such a common sense thing, but it's such an important thing because I think sometimes we do lose our common sense, how important it is to just simply follow directions, just simply do what is asked of you. What are some of the other common mistakes that you've observed in actors' auditions, and how you think that they could be avoided?
Well, aside from following instructions, I think I just touched on really what I would like to say is I find that oftentimes actors, I will ask them, and I think many casting directors will ask you to do it more than once, just so we can see a little bit more of what you have in your wheelhouse.
Right.
And I feel like the average person holds back a touch and they're scared to really go for it. Let's say you've got a server at the Dairy Queen, and she's bubbly and friendly and excited to like serve you for the day. Most people will take it from happy to exuberant, but they won't take it from happy to devastated. There's a difference between sad and devastated. Sure. And there's a difference between happy and ecstatic, but slight differences. What's sort of fun for me is if you can take it, from the employee who's loving her job and feeling great, and then all of a sudden it's like she can't be bothered. She's ready to get out of there and go home and smoke a joint, right? You showed me some real range and a contrast of what you can do. It shows me your creativity as an actor, as an artist. Do we need that kind of read for the real deal? Maybe not, but I know what you're capable of. I can always reel you back. Sure. So my best advice from watching thousands and thousands of tapes over the years is if you have the opportunity to read it a second or third time, really have some fun and play with it. Deliver the first time what you feel is right and true to that character. Work on your character development. Give me sort of your very best read as you see best fit on read one. You've done it. You've done what I've asked. But now read two, you can have a little fun and take a chance. So I think that would be my best advice to actors is if you get the opportunity to do it a second or third time, really go for something a little bit different.
That's amazing advice. Is there an audition that you remember, something really memorable that stood out for you, that left a really lasting impact that you could share with us, and why it stood out for you?
The very first feature film that I did was called As I Lay Dying. I had been working in Toronto for about 15 years as a commercial casting director, doing a lot of print. I had a successful business, but I couldn't get my foot in the door to do feature films. And I heard they were doing a lot of movies in Mississippi and Louisiana, which was the area I grew up in. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to give it a shot. And in my small hometown where I grew up, I heard they were doing a film that James Franco was directing. And the producers came by my parents' house to actually look at the house for a venue. Oh, wow. And my Southern mom from Mississippi handed my card to the producer, who was from France. And she said, my son's a casting director. He lives up in Toronto and he can speak French. And she sort of rolled her eyes and thought, yeah, right. She's from Brooklyn, New York. And she said, you need to call him and promise me you will give him a call. And so she gave her my card. She didn't call me. And she came back about 2 weeks later to thank my mom and say, you know what, we're not going to use your house for the location for the film. She said, you never called my son. And so I was riding on the Spadina Street.
Awesome.
And I looked at my phone and I was like, who's calling me from Brooklyn? And I picked up the phone and it was this incredible producer, Caroline. And she asked me if I was available to cast this film, to be the lead casting director, and how soon I could get to Mississippi.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, give me a I called Delta and I booked a flight down. I did an interview and that was sort of, she hired me right on the spot. And I knew I was talented. I had cast a lot of commercials. I believed that I was good, but I just needed some person to take a chance on me to get my foot in the door.
Of course.
And I had prayed for God to open a door for me, right? And that was the very first encounter. James Franco, I ended up casting a film for a large director at the time. And it opened a lot of doors for me. All the people that, didn't call me back or didn't return my emails, all of a sudden started returning my emails or phone calls. So this is sort of the same. I can relate to when actors need someone to take a chance on them, for a door to open. I can thank my mom for being so pushy. I can thank that incredible producer for taking a chance on me. It really was the turning point of my career and the most memorable casting session. Now, to answer your question,
I love that story. I love your mom. I love mom energy. Like, that's amazing.
that I did for that film, I took all the great training I had over the years as a commercial casting director. Nobody told me that this is how you do films. I was just winging it and giving it I believed in myself and I sold it, which is what actors have to do as well,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
Just trust your instincts. And I remember in that callback session in Mississippi, James Franco was in the room, the French producer who hired me. And that was one of the first callback sessions where I felt they really gave me full reign to run the session as I saw best fit. James Franco, made me feel super valued, not just me presenting people to him and letting him pick, but he really turned to me and said, who do you think would be best? You know these actors, you've seen them before, you've worked with them. It was one of the first moments where I felt like I'm really part of the creative process. And it was so rewarding. And I'll never forget that casting session. It was just like a dream come true. Not only to be my first feature film, but in my hometown. And it went to the Cannes Film Festival. So I got to go to the film festival and walk the red carpet. And, it was just a very magical moment for me. So
amazing.
That one goes down in the books as my favorite experience.
Absolutely. What an incredible story. That's, oh my gosh. Even to have James Franco, that moment where he's, looking at you and asking you, what do you think? It's like, okay, this is, I'm deciding, I'm helping people see this film through his eyes, and who's going to represent the script and the characters. That's an incredible story, Matthew. You travel so much. Casting on location is something that you're an expert in. Tell us about that. How much you love the travel and the pop-up casting sessions. Why do you find it so rewarding?
I love to keep myself challenged. I love to continuously learn. I take night classes learning foreign languages. One of the reasons I love casting on location is because it's difficult. I've lived in very big cities where you have tons of resources. If I'm doing a job here in Toronto, there's probably 300 plus agencies. The hard part of my job is not having enough people to audition, but it's who do I bring in?
Sure.
It's beating it down to your favorites because you've got thousands of submissions coming in. Oftentimes for one role, you'll get 2,000 headshots come through. If I'm working in small town Alberta, if I'm working in Moncton, if I'm working in Arkansas, which I did a really large film there, and I think there was maybe one or two talent agencies in the entire state. It sort of got me back to my real people casting roots. When I first started casting at Jigsaw back in 2000 to like maybe 2004, I did tons of real people casting. I was out on the streets of Toronto with my Polaroid camera, and then the digital camera came out. They were big, funky, and I would stop complete strangers on the streets and, and ask them, let me take your mugshot. I'm doing this TD Bank job, or I'm looking for some cool skateboarder kids. Looking for people. I would hit up, tattoo parlors in the city, looking for edgy people for music videos. So I love that aspect of casting because it's a challenge, right? You've got to sell yourself and convince someone to give you their phone number, their email. And, that's sort of what it's like casting on location. You have to advertise, get on the local radio stations, run ads in the newspaper. Now, of course, with social media, it's an easier process.
Sure.
You can join Facebook groups and spread the word. But it allows me to see real people who are not actors, who are actually really gifted, and you can discover talent. People who've never done this before, but just naturally talented, and who maybe live in, small town Ontario and never had the opportunity to train and to be an actor.
Sure.
So it's really rewarding in that aspect. So I love to go to difficult places that I've never been before and don't live, and to make a project happen and to really find some great talent.
What was one of the more your most challenging roles to cast? What was a tough one where you really had trouble finding that perfect person?
For me, I think one of the most difficult characters that I've had to cast was for the James Franco film I was talking about
Mm-hmm.
earlier, my first movie called As I Lay Dying. There's a character named Vardaman, who's one of Addie Bundren's many children, and he's about an 8-year-old boy. And in the script, he has just as much dialogue as the lead actors. So I
Whoa.
needed a little kid who was really talented with dialogue, but who was natural and not a sort of a forced kid actor who had been
Yep.
overtrained. So we were casting this in Mississippi, where there was maybe one or two talent agencies, and I needed the kid to sound authentically Southern. So I did several huge open calls. Hundreds, if not thousands, of children came through. I saw all the kids with the pro agencies. We did a breakdown nationwide across the United States. But I remember finding this little boy, named Brady Permenter, who had never auditioned before. His mom just saw a big lineup of people outside. I think maybe they thought it was a yard sale. So they went nosy and checked it out. And she was like, "Do you want to audition for this film?" And he came in, and a little redheaded kid, about 8, and he was incredible. He blew me out of the water.
And he'd never auditioned before. He had never done acting or performing, and that.
I handed him the sides, just a little chunk of them because there were lots of them.
Sure.
And he had it memorized and went right in and just
Whoa.
like, wow. And I remember for the callback, when he came in to meet James Franco, there was probably 6 or 7 pages of dialogue. And I said, "Hey, Brady, do you have your sides with you?" And he's like, "I got it in my head." Just like, and he was so comfortable and so good. I was very proud that, I had discovered some kid who was amazing. He booked the role in the film.
Unbelievable.
Got to come to TIFF, to the Toronto Film Festival, and walk the red carpet. And, James Franco loved him so much that he used him again in a second film. And it sort of, well, it did. It shifted his career into becoming an actor. So,
of course.
But that particular role was a tough one. We had to search high and low, and little did I know it was right around the corner from where the film was taking place, So those are really special moments. That's sort of the reason I love what I do.
Yes.
When you can change someone's path, right?
It's absolutely incredible. Yeah, his life has changed, and there's that skill and talent he didn't even know was inside. And again, his mom, mom saw the line. What's up with that? You gotta love moms. Matthew, what are the trends right now in casting? Are there trends? What are your clients looking for when you're working on projects?
Each project, as a rule of thumb, you're casting what is reflective of the script, especially if you're doing feature film. But there's an interesting trend I've found lately that I don't know if actors are aware of. Mm-hmm. I've had several directors hang out in my live callbacks, not in the audition room with me and my team, but out in the waiting room. Some kind of young, cool hipster directors who are pretending to be actors. And I had a director who did this on a film, and I was like, "Man, what were you doing out there in the audition room?" And he said to me, he said, "Listen, everyone who's here for a callback is here because I believe in them.
Yes.
I want to know, who do I like? Who do I gel with? Who do I want to be part of my film family?" And I remember the director was out in the audition room with his sides every time, waiting to go in next. He's like, "Hey, do you want to read these with me before I go in and see Matthew?" He would read with the actors. He was chatting with the moms, getting a gist of what they were like before booking their kids.
That's amazing.
And, you just never know who's watching. And this has happened 4 or 5 times, I think, in the last 2 or 3 years, since COVID has passed. And I'm still doing self-tapes for round 1. Sometimes there is no live callback, but for a few of the most recent live callbacks that I've had the director or producer sort of out in the waiting room and, on the sly, checking everybody out. And I remember this director said, "Make sure you send the script to everyone."
Yeah.
You don't always get the script for the callback, but hopefully you do.
Yes.
And he looked at one of the other performers. He was like, "Man, did you read the script?" She's like, "Oh no, I didn't have time for that. I just studied my lines." That was the director, right? So,
whoa, okay.
actors, you need to be on and ready and
Yes.
proud the moment you pull up in the parking lot. You better turn on the charm, get your mind set. You never know who's watching in the audition room, particularly for live callbacks. I've seen clients, out there, and they're sort of seeing you and the real you before you walk in the room and turn on the pro charm that you do, right? So yeah.
Well, for sure. That's a really good reminder too, especially, when you get a callback, even if you don't book it, it's such a good reminder that the casting director, like yourself, the director saw something in you, and maybe it's you're not going to book it, but they saw something in you that was incredibly promising enough to bring you back. So like you said, pull up in the parking lot every minute, make sure you are on. And that is a good reminder. Even if you're in the waiting room, you never know. My goodness, Matthew, thank you for that. That's a trend that we should all be thinking about, because you definitely want to be on if the director is going to be in there with you.
You ended up giving me a list at the very end. I said, "Well, your session is here. Here's your link of the callback if you care to watch it." And he goes, "No, these are the people I want in my film."
Wow. And how great is that for you? That must help you so much as well, to have such feedback at that point, because then you're having the director see you, I guess, even as those actors are developing in the second part of the audition. So what a neat collaboration that would be for you as well.
Indeed.
Matthew, as we start to wrap things up, and it's been so amazing talking to you, what advice do you have for actors that to not just excel in auditions, to not just do great in auditions, but to work on building a sustainable and fulfilling career? What would you offer them, having been an actor yourself, and of course cast so many of them?
I feel maybe the best advice that I could give is to really be grateful. I always like to say gratitude, not attitude. Humility can take you a long way in this industry. Thank yous can take you a long way. I love it when actors send me a note, just an email, to say, "Thank you so much for considering me. I'm really enjoyed the callback. Grateful for the opportunity." If you book the role and you thank your agent on social media, tag your casting director. I mean, those are the moments that we live for, and sort of why we do our job. We like to help people realize their dreams. And to be thanked for that is not expected, but it is certainly welcomed and a sweet surprise. And, you want to leave a good lasting impression and have a great reputation. And I find little sort of great etiquette, I call it actor etiquette,
Mm-hmm.
can help you in the long haul. And be nice to people along the way. You never know which assistant will end up being your client. Fellow actors may turn into other directors,
Sure.
producers, and be your clients. So I encourage actors to think long-term versus short-term, and to really sort of lay a great foundation, and treat others as you want to be treated. That simple rule that we've heard for so long, I think it really applies so well in our industry. So that's some of the best advice that I can give actors, in general, is, to be appreciative, because we sense it. And I like helping people who are grateful for me helping them.
Gratitude and be nice and respectful. Matthew, those are great words of advice for us to end on. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, sharing your insights. It was such a pleasure to speak with you, and we wish you all the best in your travels. I know you have a busy week, so thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
I've been speaking with casting director Matthew Morgan, the founder of Morgan Casting. You can learn more about Matthew's projects at morgancasting.com. You can follow him on Instagram at Morgan Casting Inc., on Twitter at Morgan Casting. I'm Rosie Ferguson. Thanks for spending time with us on the Spotlight Sessions today. Bye for now.